how to do mediation marketing. So in this video, we're going to talk about how you should market your mediation practice the right way so that you're able to get more cases, but also more consistency in case generation. And the content that we're going to cover here is going to be applicable to both beginners, those that are trying to start a new mediation practice, those that are trying to transition out of active law practices or active full-time employment, to those that already are active as full-time mediators today. The reason why I wanted to record this video is because I see so many mediators doing this wrong, and it leads to unnecessary delays and disappointment. So hopefully this will set you on the right track. Now, if you like this sort of content, make sure that you hit that subscribe button and the like button. And with that said, we'll jump into the presentation. So the first thing that you need to do is have the right expectations. And this will help you with the emotional roller coaster of starting a mediation practice or trying to grow an active practice. So just be aware that it's going to take time. Rome wasn't built in one day, so don't expect to see immediate results. And if you follow through on some of the advice in this video, it's going to ensure that you reduce the time period that it will take for you to get to where you want to go. How quickly you reach your end goal, and that will typically be getting enough cases to live off of this as a full-time mediator. Well, that will typically be directly related to three factors: where you start out today, how much work you put in, and the quality of that work. And I've recorded videos on this topic, and they are on the YouTube channel, so have a look at that if you're interested in learning more. Now, for this particular video, I wanted to share a slide with you here just to help you along the way. So this little checklist will indicate whether it will take you slightly longer to get to where you want to go, or if it's going to happen quicker. So the first question is, do you have existing cases today? Are you getting work at all today? If you're not, well, then you're just starting out. That's absolutely fine. We'll show you exactly what you need to do to get to the point where you're actually getting cases. But if you're at this level, it means that it will likely take a little bit longer for you to get to becoming a full-time mediator, because you will probably not have an extensive network and you won't have any referral parties. You probably won't be on any panels. So the second level will be, are you able to charge for your cases today? If you're not, it means that you are getting cases and you're probably doing pro bono work, which is fantastic because that gets you experience, it gets you exposure, and a lot of other things that we'll talk about later in this presentation. But it also means that you're not actually getting people to pay for your services just yet. So if you're at this stage, it means that you still have some exposure and you still have some experience that you can leverage off of. So it's going to take you slightly quicker. It's going to be quicker for you than if you're just starting out from scratch, because you've already moved past the hurdle of observations and many other things that you need to do when you're starting out as a mediator. Now, if you're already getting work and you're able to charge for that work, then you've reached a very good level. It means that people are prepared to pay for your services. So that will have set you on the path of getting more cases and getting more consistency in the cases that you're getting. Now, the final level is, are you getting cases directly from attorneys and, for clients, for those of you who deal directly with end clients? If you are, that's kind of the ultimate level, because that means that people are making an active choice to work with you. Under point 2, you're getting paid work, but that work will typically come from panels. And even though there's some degree of choice there, the individuals that decide to work with you will typically do so on the back of being presented with a list of different options, and then they select you. Well, they didn't actually put together that list. They were presented with that list. So a much better position to be in is if people actually make an active choice to use you. And that's what we're talking about here on the point 3. If they do, then you're at the most optimal level, because it means that there's a lot for you to work with. It means that you have existing relationships, you have credibility, and you're going to be able to leverage off that credibility. This is usually the level where we see our clients being able to generate the quickest results. And sometimes we're talking days, weeks. It can be incredibly fast. But that's not the expectations that you should have when you're trying to build your practice. Patience here really is key. But I just wanted to highlight these different areas for you. Now, there are some common questions that we get when we talk with beginner mediators, but also more established mediators. And they tend to revolve around location and also the type of area that they're practicing in. So let's start off with the location first. So one of these common questions could be, I'm based in Australia. Do I build my practice the same way as someone who's based in UK or in the US? Or I'm based in Germany. Would I go about building my practice the same way as someone who's based in South Africa or in Chile? This could also apply to cities. So I'm based in New York. Do I build my practice the same way as someone who's based in the Australian countryside? And even though there may be nuances between how you build a practice, depending on which location that you're in, from our experience working with hundreds of neutrals across the world, the same building blocks always apply. Now, obviously, there may be ways for you to enhance your practice based on location specifics. And granted, there is a difference between New York and the countries, but for pretty much everybody, this is a second level focus area. And by that, I mean 80% plus of the results are going to come from you just having the right building blocks in your business development efforts. And if you spend your time focusing on that 20%, it's going to take you longer to get to where you want to go. So don't occupy yourself with trying to figure out how you are different because you're based in your location. It's much more important for you to devote your energy to just getting the right building blocks in place. And the building blocks are what we're going to cover in the end of this presentation. And you may laugh a little bit at some of the examples that I provided, Australian, Outback, etc. But the reason why I bring those up is we've had clients in those locations. We have clients all over the world, and they're going to be in metropolitan, rural areas, everywhere. And the same building blocks do apply. Now, the next question that we get typically revolves around your practice area. Let me explain further. So that question is, what strategies should I use for my practice because I'm in intellectual property, or I'm in divorce, or I'm in real estate, or I'm in commercial? I think you can guess where I'm going with this. Your practice area obviously does matter, but for the same reasons as we just covered when it comes to location, it matters less than you think. So it's much more important for you to get the right building blocks in place and not occupy yourself with trying to figure out how it's different to build a practice as a real estate focused mediator than a divorce focused mediator than a commercially oriented mediator. So your location and your niche area doesn't really matter all that much from a business development perspective for 80% of the results that you're trying to generate. Now, naturally, there are ways for you to develop niche-specific strategies, location-specific strategies, and they do matter, but that's something that typically is introduced when you're at a more advanced business development level. And that typically will coincide with you having more cases coming in on a recurring basis. Now, why is it that location and practice area doesn't matter? We're generalizing here, but why is it? Well, the simple reason is that you're always interacting with other people. So the amount of business that you get as a mediator is a direct function of the relationships that you have and the visibility that you have. And people aren't different in London than they are in New York, than they are in Los Angeles, for the most part, or than they are in the countryside. So you're always going to be interacting with other people. And how well you do is going to be derived from the types of relationships that you have. So let's talk about how you can start a mediation practice or develop your existing practice further. So here's the evolution of business development. And what we're going to cover here in this section will be applicable to all of these scenarios. If you're just starting out as a mediator, if you are established and you're getting some cases, if you're a full-time mediator, if you're trying to transition out of an active law practice or full-time employment, it will all be directly applicable to your individual situation. And it goes without saying that it will be directly applicable to any location and any practice area. So here's the basic taxonomy of your business development efforts. We got the beginner level, the intermediate level, and the advanced level. And the reason why I've structured it this way is because so many mediators get this entirely wrong. How they approach business development may be derived from their experience, so past work, past employment, past businesses. It may also be influenced by what their friends are telling them, what other mediators are telling them. And rarely is all of that very applicable, because the mediation ecosystem is very different from a lot of other business areas. And the easiest way of explaining that is when you are running, let's say, a consultancy business, then you will typically interact with a decision maker at a company, and you're going to try to provide your services to them. Now, it will be up to that decision maker and potentially his or her colleagues whether they want to work with you or not. And let's say you're an expert witness. You're providing your services to attorneys. Now, whether you get hired or not will be decided by the attorneys that you interact with at one firm. Hopefully that's all clear. Now, for a mediator, it looks different. A mediator needs to have two parties that will select to work with them in most cases. So that means that you need to have sufficient amount of visibility and relationships to have one attorney to put you forward for a case. And then you will have to have another attorney that will have to agree on using you. So if you've got plaintiffs and defense side here. And I know that this doesn't apply to all mediators, because some of you may potentially be interacting with one counterpart. It may be someone a couple going through divorce, or it may be an HR professionals. But for many of you, it will be two attorneys that will have to agree on using you. Or it may be other types of parties, but they're still going to have to feel comfortable with using your services. So you can see how this becomes much more complex. And it becomes even more challenging because, for the most part, attorneys like to work with mediators that are established and that are in high demand. So that means that if you're just starting out, it's going to be very difficult for you to be in high demand and very established, for the obvious reasons. Now, there are naturally ways for you to manage these challenges, and that's precisely what we do with our clients. And we're covering some of this content here in this presentation today. So let's get back to the taxonomy. And I just want to clarify one point here. What we're talking about when we're saying beginner, immediate, and intermediate and advanced is where you're starting out. So if you have 0 cases today, then you're going to be a beginner. If you have some cases today, you're going to be intermediate. And if you're more established, you're going to be advanced. But this is from a business development point of view. So you can be a beginner today, and that will be the starting point. And you'll understand this once we start going through the upcoming slides. So if you have no cases, you are a beginner, but you can quickly move through this and operate at an advanced level, even as a beginner. It all revolves around the business development activities that you are focusing on. So here's the beginner level. And at this level, you will typically start off if you have no clients or referral parties and you have a very limited network. And in no order of significance, this is what we think that you should be focused on. So the first thing that you need to do is ensure that you have a commercially viable offer. And we've recorded a dedicated video on this, which is called How to Not Start Your Mediation Practice. And it's on our YouTube channel, and I'm going to link to it down here in the description. What that essentially means, in short, is you need to ensure that you are providing a service which is going to be in demand, which people already are paying for today. If that's not the case, it means that you need to have a lot of time, money, and energy. And in some cases, an unlimited amount of time, money, and energy. And most of us don't. Most of us need to get the bills paid, which means that we need to approach this with a commercial lens. So ensure that you have a commercially viable offer first of all. Now, once you've done that exercise, you can move on to focusing on obtaining observations. So that's going to be key for you to get certified. Obtaining observations is more difficult for most mediators than you would think, because people aren't necessarily lining up to help you get these observations. That means that you're going to have to put in some effort here. You're going to have to reach out and talk to individuals that you don't necessarily know. It may make you feel uncomfortable, but my message to you is, this is something that you're going to have to do anyway to grow your practice. You're going to have to get comfortable with contacting people and trying to sow the seeds of business relationships. So the sooner you start with this, the better. And if you start with this right now, when you're trying to get observations, it's fantastic because you're starting off at a very early stage and you're going to be able to hone in on these skills, and you're very likely going to be quite good at it by the end of it. Now, the next thing that you can focus on is getting pro bono and reduced fee work. Now, typically this will come from different kinds of sources, such as court-appointed panels. What this will do is that it will ensure that you get experience because you start mediating. It will also ensure that you start getting cases under your belt that will help you get on more advanced panels further on. It will also get you exposure to attorneys and other types of parties, and you will understand them better, which will help shape your business development efforts. Because one of the key things about doing this effectively is understanding your target audience. And the way you understand your target audience is by interacting with them. And the final thing that will happen is that you will also start building out the network. So we work with mediators that are quite established, but they still do this kind of work, like reduced fee work and even pro bono work. So it's great for you if you're just starting out and you're able to get on this kind of panels. Moving on, you should also focus on learning from other mediators, because when you're starting out, it will be greatly helpful for you to see how other mediators are running their practices. And you can do this in different ways. One easy way is to just follow them online on social media. Connect with them on LinkedIn, follow what they're doing on LinkedIn, see what kind of posts they're doing, check out their website, check out their blog. But you don't have to stop at just doing this online. You can also meet people in person, could be at different kinds of industry events, bar association events, etc. That's a great opportunity for you to get to know people. And nothing prevents you from also scheduling one-on-ones. You can do Zoom calls, virtual coffees, phone calls, etc. And obviously, this is also going to come with the same type of challenges as when you're trying to get observations. You may find that people don't line up to get on a 15-minute virtual coffee Zoom call with you. But if you're able to get people on those kinds of calls, it also helps you with your outreaching efforts, and you're going to be much better at it going forward. And that's a skill that you're going to have to develop sooner or later anyway. You also need basic visibility, both on and offline. And what I'm talking about here is just having a website, having a LinkedIn profile. There may be some other places where you can feature, but those are really the key areas. And what I'm talking about here is not spending months on developing the best looking website and paying people to fix your LinkedIn profile. Done is better than perfect here, and we don't want to spend too much money doing these things. You also want to make sure that you start doing basic networking. And what that really revolves around is just trying to connect with people that directly or indirectly could become clients and referral parties of yours. That's super important. You don't want to spend all your time networking with your peers, because here, it's about information gathering exercises. If you're able to connect with people that ultimately could be in a position to hire you, it will give you a better opportunity to sow the seeds of those initial relationships, but also through interacting with them, understanding why they make decisions. Why do they work with certain mediators? Why do they not work with other mediators? And being equipped with this knowledge is going to put you in a much better position. And then finally, deliver value. I know that that's not going to be as easy when you're starting out and you're not actually mediating as when you are mediating, but it's important to have this in mind. It's not a one-sided road here. We want to make sure that we always deliver value. That could be in a business context, but also in a non-business context. And if you're just starting out, perhaps you're unable to deliver value immediately. You're on a call to get to know a potential referral party. Perhaps there's nothing for you to do there, but by just remembering what they say, you can circle back to it sometime in the future. So that would be a way of delivering some kind of value. Maybe you can connect them with someone, or maybe you can do something for them. Do not approach people with a me focus, because no one likes that, and it's going to burn relationships for you. You need to be patient with these things. Finally, here from beginners, I wanted to share a few don't do's with you. Don't expect other mediators to provide you with work. And the reason I say this is because so many new mediators and so many mediators trying to establish themselves spend a lot of time and effort interacting with their peers. Ultimately, your peers are very rarely going to provide you with business. You should be focusing on the people that can provide you with business instead. Now, obviously, from a learning exercise and an information gathering exercise, it can be helpful for you to interact with more experienced mediators, but that doesn't mean that you drop everything and that's the only thing that you do. And please don't expect these mediators to help you. If they do, that's fantastic. But if you come in with that expectation, feeling like they owe you something, you're probably going to be disappointed. So just be aware of this. Number two, don't expect to get business from any other area than what I just mentioned on the previous slide. And if you need a reminder, just rewind this video. The reason I say this is so many mediators will focus on non-relevant type of business development activities. And why is that, you may ask? Well, it may be because of a number of different reasons. They may not know how to do these things. And it's very easy that you get stuck with spending months on trying to get the best looking website, or the first thing that you do is that you order your business cards. And these things will very rarely generate results for you. Now, I know from having worked with hundreds of mediators that you can get business from a vast range of sources and a vast range of activities. But for the majority, whether you're established or not, the core building blocks always apply. So nothing beats having a strong network with direct referral parties. No business cards in the world is going to replace that. So don't get sidetracked with things that don't matter. Just because you're busy doesn't mean that you're doing the right things. So focus on the core activities that I just showed you on the previous slide, and you should be fine. Finally, we talked about this, but I just wanted to stress this point. Do not do anything unless you have a commercially viable offer. So ensure that you've done that exercise so that you know who you're providing your services to and essentially what makes them tick. Why would they choose to work with someone like you? If you know this, it's going to be so much easier for you to be successful with your business development efforts. That takes us to the intermediate level. Now, remember, what we're talking about here is the starting point. So you start here if you already have some clients and referral parties, as well as a decent network. And network here is not your neighbor, your neighbor's dog walker, family and friends. It is relevant parties. And relevant parties will always be individuals that can provide you with direct and indirect cases and referrals. So let's get to the list. So the first thing that you should do when you're at this stage is try to join panels to get paid work. You will already be actively mediating, which means that you have cases under your belt. That's something that's going to be required for you to join panels. Now, this is really important. Do not expect that these panels will be the only thing that you need to be successful, because on most of these panels, most of the work goes to a small group of people. So it's kind of like 80-20 rule again. 80% of the work goes to 20% of the mediators on this panel. So we have many, many clients that are on a lot of panels, but they're not actually seeing much work from those panels. So why would I then suggest that you should join these panels, you may ask? Well, the reason is simple. If you get work from them, it's fantastic, but it will help you with credibility and visibility simply being on these panels. You can communicate around it on social media, on your blog and elsewhere. You can also communicate around it in your direct interaction with potential referral parties and clients. So it would just help enhance your visibility. At this level, you should also use LinkedIn for communication purposes to a greater extent than at the beginner level. This will help you with becoming noticed and staying on top of mind. So it's important to have some amount of visibility here. We're not talking about posting every day on LinkedIn, but it should be something that you do fairly regularly. You should also be active both on and offline. And this obviously is a broad statement, but what I mean here is you should not only be focused on posting on LinkedIn, you should try to be active. Let's say that you can participate in different kinds of online events. You could speak at webinars, you could participate in panel discussions on webinars, and you can do the same in real life, in the offline space. You can go to events, you can speak at events, you can participate on panels at these events, and there's a lot of other different things that you could do. You could write columns, you can post on your blog, can be interviewed in podcasts, you can run your own podcast, etc. So there's much more that you can do in the communication space. You also need to make sure that you expand your network, both on and offline, with relevant parties. So potential clients and referral parties. This is going to be really important, even when you are getting a lot of cases, because things may always change. Your clients, your referral parties may retire, they may move away. So you don't want to end up in a situation where you're trying to cultivate relationships when you really need it. You want to be able to do it when you can have the patience and the endurance to let things take their course over time. You should at this stage also make the most of your existing network, because now you're getting business from people. So you want to make sure that you make the most of that, because it's always going to be easier for you to get more business from existing business sources than trying to cultivate new business sources. And then finally, you need to always deliver value. At this level, it's going to be easier for you than when you're just starting out, because here you're actively mediating. So you can deliver value as a professional by just doing a good job, but you will also have the opportunity to provide value in non-business context simply because you have more interaction and more exposure to your referral parties. And that takes us to the advanced level. And most people aren't at this level. And this is essentially what we work with our clients on. And the easiest way to explain what happens at this level, your business development efforts are at this level so finely tuned that you're not perceived as being in need of business. And people are pre-sold on your capabilities. So let me explain these points a little bit further. So the first one is leverage your network. Here, it essentially means that your network networks on your behalf. That's not a point that you get to immediately with someone, but once you do, it's essentially going to be working 24/7. You don't have to be actively involved for this to happen. Even though you're obviously always focusing on business development, this is something that will go on while you are sleeping, and thus it will be incredibly effective. Word of mouth beats most business development efforts. Network expansion. Well, what we're talking about here is precise and purpose-built activities for expanding your network at scale. In this case, more is better, because if you're approaching 10 people, chances are that you're going to be less successful than if you're approaching 100 people or 1,000 people. Contact cultivation. You don't cultivate the contact by sending someone a LinkedIn connection or an email blast once. The better the strategy here, the more naturally you can take someone from an initial contact to an active and recurring business relationship. And I see this time and time again. People expect to be able to get responses when they email a big list of cold contacts or when they approach people on LinkedIn. Most of us are in such a state of information overload. So even if we wanted to engage, it's quite difficult to do so. So you need to have the right expectations here. And if you have the right strategy, you're going to be able to do this much more effectively than 99.9% of your competition. Visibility. So obviously posting on your blog, on your website, and posting on LinkedIn is great. But there's also ways for you to better understand how, for example, LinkedIn's engine works so that your posts are going to be put in front of a wider audience. But this also goes beyond LinkedIn. There are many different ways for you, both on and offline, where you can enhance your presence, enhance your visibility so that you become noticed for more parties, but also that you stay on top of mind much more effectively. Location and niche specific strategies. Well, at some point, you may be interested in widening the areas that you focus on, or even zeroing in on a particular niche. And this may also revolve around you wanting to go statewide, nationwide, or even international. And the business development efforts that are required for these types of activities are going to be slightly different than the ones that we covered thus far. And finally, we've got delivering value. That should always be front and center of everything that you do. If you have that kind of mindset, unselfish mindset, where you're delivering value both in a business and non-business context, you are going to be able to develop and cultivate relationships, enhance your visibility much more effectively than anybody else. The final thing that I wanted to leave you with, just to set your expectations right, is what it takes to be successful. So the first thing that you need is patience, because Rome wasn't built in one day. So you're going to have to expect this to take some time, especially when it comes to cultivating new relationships. So that's never something that happens quickly, but if you do it the right way, obviously, it's going to be quicker than for the majority of your competition. Consistency. And by that, I mean, it's much more effective for you to do this regularly rather than do it in the occasional blast when you feel like you have the energy, the interest, or the time. Doing something every day is much more effective than trying to do it once per week or once per month. Incremental, and by that I mean, we're not talking about you spending 5 to 6 hours a day doing business development. Now, if you did, that would be fantastic. You're going to see results much quicker, but most of us are busy with other things. But if you only put 30 minutes, 45 minutes into this per day, that will build up over time and it will have a snowball effect. And it's always going to be much more effective for you to do this regularly than to do it occasionally. And I'll give you an example of that. How likely are you going to be to engage with someone that tries to beat down your door once every 6 months with a lot of communication and messages, compared to the individual that have stayed in touch with you over the past year, 2 years, and they've done so regularly, but not too often, without actively selling and pushing you into doing business with them? I know which one I would choose. I would always go for the person that I've heard from over time. So that's everything that I had for you in this video. I hope you liked this video today. If you did, make sure that you hit that subscribe button and the like button. And if you have suggestions for topics that I should cover in this video, then put them down there in the comment section. I'd love to hear from you and I'll try to cover it in future videos. Thanks very much for listening in.